So this one's a little different. Marvel has plenty of movies that underperformed or disappointed its long-standing fans, but today we're only looking at the true flops. And by flop, I don't just mean bad reviews or a slightly lower box office revenue than expected. I mean films that actually lost money, where the production budget plus marketing outweighed what the film managed to scrape together after its release. So this is going to be a list of where the studio walked away with an actual loss, and in some cases, almost went bankrupt. If we travel way back, Marvel's very first theatrical outing was Howard the Duck. Produced by Universal and Lucasfilm, yes that, George Lucas. It had a $37 million budget, but managed just $37.9 million in worldwide earnings, which is a loss when you factor in all the extra marketing and promotional costs that are typically not included in the production budget. The critics? Well, they tore it apart for its strange tone and awkward special effects. It later went on to gain a small niche cult following many years down the line, but financially, it was and still is a complete disaster. Then there was Elektra, the spin-off from Daredevil, starring Jennifer Garner. With a budget of around $65 million, it barely made $57 million at the worldwide box office. So yeah, that's an $8 million loss right off the bat. The reviews were brutal, and the audience just didn't seem to care. Also, any hopes of building a Daredevil universe quickly died with Elektra's box office flop. Then came Punisher Warzone in 2008. It should have been a straightforward action thriller win. With Ray Stevenson taking over the role, it cost around $35 million to make, but only grossed $10 million worldwide. That's not just a flop. Those percentages would have destroyed a smaller studio, and it's one of Marvel's lowest-earning movies of all time. In fact, I didn't even know this movie existed before creating this list. Have you seen the trailer? How did they spend $35 million on something that looked that bad? Anyway, next up is the infamous Fantastic Four reboot from 2015. With a $122 million budget and heavy marketing, it seems this film had everything stacked against it before release. Like a chaotic production, studio interference, and a lot of bad press. Starring Miles Teller, Kate Mara, and Michael B. Jordan, it grossed just $167.9 million worldwide. But this was nowhere near enough to break even. That's because the marketing budget alone was reportedly almost as much as the production budget. This was because 20th Century Fox wanted to establish this as the start of a lucrative new franchise. So, yeah, even though it technically made $47 million in profit on paper, it needed to earn double its production budget to break even. And, yeah, the film came nowhere close to doing that. This was such a disaster that Fox completely abandoned the franchise until Marvel got the rights back many years later. Okay, so now we're moving into the Sony era with Madame Web in 2024. With an $80 million budget, it flopped hard right out the gate. Reviews were awful, and it was mocked to death. After only being able to bring in $100 million worldwide, the film's global gross fell short of what it required to break even, which in all actuality really needed to be closer to $350 million. So yeah, it was a mess from the moment its trailer dropped and was brutally downvoted. And the top comments on the video are these hilariously savage one-liners tearing it apart before it even hit theaters. Now we're in the Disney era, kicking off with the Marvels in 2023. It had a budget of $275 million, but only brought in a worldwide gross of just $206 million. This made it the lowest-grossing film in the MCU at the time. It also notably had the worst opening weekend for any MCU film. It flopped so bad that it's unlikely we'll see another Captain Marvel film for a very long time. And finally, Kraven the Hunter in 2024. With a reported budget of around $110 million, expectations were high. But poor word of mouth and weak audience turnout meant it underperformed badly. At only $62 million in worldwide box office revenue, it lost around $40 million right off the bat. So yeah, it's safe to call this one a flop. So those are the true flops, Marvel movies that actually lost money. But what about the ones that technically broke even or made money on paper yet still missed the mark creatively or commercially? Here are some honorable mentions. First up, Daredevil. Back in 2003, Daredevil had Ben Affleck in the lead, and the film felt like it was a hit because it was part of the early 2000s superhero boom alongside Spider-Man and X-Men. It also had Jennifer Garner as Elektra, fresh off her award-winning role as playing Sydney Bristow in the hit TV show Alias. It had a $78 million budget and a global take of $179 million. Which I guess, yeah, is technically profit on paper, but it barely covered its costs by the time you factor in marketing. And this film had a massive marketing push. So the film likely just about broke even. Also, poor reviews and audience apathy meant plans for a sequel died instantly. And you know what? That same year, Ang Lee's Hulk arrived with Eric Bana in the title role. It grossed $245 million on a $137 million budget, which are, respectable numbers. But the lukewarm reception ended Universal's attempt to produce a sequel. But Universal weren't done. Oh no. They tried again with The Incredible Hulk in 2008, this time as an official MCU film starring Edward Norton. But it made a similar $264 million gross on a $150 million budget. Sony's Ghost Rider in 2007 is another borderline case. So this was Nicolas Cage's first outing, and it made $228 million worldwide on a $110 million budget. Yes, this is technically profitable, but reviews were poor, and it failed to ignite a series worth keeping alive. And you know what? Fox's Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer in 2007 was another critical flop. $301 million worldwide on a $130 million budget wasn't a disaster financially, but they did end up canceling their planned follow-up sequel as well as a Silver Surfer spinoff after poor reception and box office performance. The franchise was later rebooted with Fantastic Four in 2015, but, well, we know how well that turned out. Even the MCU has its honorable mentions. Eternals in 2021 had a massive $200 million budget but only grossed $402 million. Barely breaking even when you account for all the extra marketing costs, it was a black eye for Marvel's otherwise invincible box office streak at the time. And honestly, I don't think I've seen anyone ever give this movie a positive review. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania in 2023 was supposed to kick off Phase 5 with a bang. Instead, it barely reached $500 million worldwide on a $200 million budget, marking the lowest turnout for a Marvel film of that size. Now let's talk about Marvel on the small screen, because the TV side has had its fair share of disasters too. Let's start with the true financial flops. Do you remember a TV show called Inhumans? If you do, you're part of a very, very tiny group of people. According to dailysuperheroes.com, the budget for Marvel's Inhumans was $200 million, which ranks it among the most expensive 8-episode shows of all time. The TV series, released in 2017, had its first 2 episodes screened in IMAX theaters for a limited run, where they earned $3.5 million at the box office. It struggled to bring in 4 million views per episode, at one point dropping down to only 2.3 million. And you know what? I'm not surprised it did so bad. The execution was laughably terrible. Cheap effects, stiff acting, and a paper-thin script. The show was canceled after just 1 season. Then there's Helstrom from 2020. There isn't much information available about its budget, but it's full of special effects, and given it was produced by Marvel Television itself, we can safely assume the budget was in the tens of millions. It was sold as a darker, horror-inspired Marvel series, but it barely made a blip on release. It's hard to find verifiable viewership numbers, but Hulu itself has said the low number of views was a determining factor for it being quietly axed after just 1 season. A forgettable entry that most Marvel fans never even knew existed. Now for the honorable mentions. Iron Fist from 2017 had a big opportunity. Tied to Marvel's Netflix lineup and leading into The Defenders, it should have been a hit. Instead, it became infamous for bad acting, bland fights, and poor writing. It limped through 2 seasons before being dropped. The Defenders itself was supposed to be Marvel's answer to the Avengers on TV, combining Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. But the reception was mixed. The viewing numbers were lower than expected, and it ended after just one season. The Punisher had a strong fan following, and Jon Bernthal's performance was praised, but the series struggled with uneven writing, and after 2 seasons, Netflix pulled the plug. And then, there's Jessica Jones and Agent Carter. You'd be surprised to know that Jessica Jones was critically acclaimed in its first season, and Agent Carter had a loyal niche fan base. But both fizzled out over time from declining quality, low ratings, and ended earlier than fans had hoped. So are there any other Marvel failures you think should be on this list? Like, I'm still in shock the Eternals almost broke even. I always got the impression it flopped hard. Anyway, I read every comment, so drop yours below.